Welcome back to the Finding Direction speaker series. This time, we spoke to Tom Cuddy, a High Altitude Exercise Physiology program alumni. Tom currently works as the exercise physiologist at Lone Peak Physical Therapy in Bozeman, Montana. A big thank you, as always, to the Western Colorado University School of Graduate Studies for funding this project, and another thank you to the High Altitude Exercise Physiology program.
So I'm super ecstatic I never know if I should stand in front of the camera for these things. No, I'm super ecstatic to introduce Tom Cuddy, who is a alumni from our program, the HAPE program, and is currently working at a physical therapy clinic in Bozeman, Montana. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Christina Buchanan, who's going to say a little bit more about Tom, and then we'll let Tom take it away talking about professional development. Thank you so much for being here, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
Woohoo.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Christina.
I'm at home. I'm not with them because I've been with them for too much time.
I can only imagine.
We love you too.
Anyway, so what shall I say? I'm introducing you. Tom was in our second cohort, I think.
Yep.
Tom was one of 8 students in that cohort, 7 of which were women.
Whoa. Nice.
It was great. It was really fun. Anyway, and he was, I will say, definitely an impressive student with regard to his writing, his curiosity, the questions he asked. Definitely a top student, and has gone on to do really well in Montana, working as an exercise physiologist at Lone Peak Physical Therapy. I got the name right. Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, he did his research project on IPC and acclimatization to altitude in freshman students. And that was fun. We got to go hike Scarps Ridge. And Dr. D and I had contests over who had the higher pulse or oxygen saturation during that hike. I guess who had a higher one. I don't know. I'm not doing a very good job. Talked a lot in the last several weeks. And it's great to see you. And you guys are lucky to have Tom here to talk with you. He's the last thing I'll say is he's very generous with his time and energy. He's done a couple talks with our students, and so you're in for a treat. He's also done well and brought other HAPE graduates, Sam Vanderveld being one, to Montana. So there was a trivia question, I think, about Montana, right, Maggie? Yeah.
I cannot remember what it was, but there was one.
Okay. Cool. All right. So that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Christina.
All right. I'm muting myself.
Okay. Someone might have to tell me if I can share my screen.
I'm going to make you a co-host, Tom. Give me a sec.
Perfect.
There you go. Can you do it now?
Let's see. Yep, I have the share screen feature. Getting that.
I really like your model of the spine and pelvis behind you.
It's
It's a good one.
okay. participants can now see your application. That must mean you can see my
Perfect.
PowerPoint. Cool.
Yes.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Sweet. So, Maggie, thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out. It's always fun to revisit the old grad program. I guess before I start today, I would want to just make sure this is a useful talk for everyone. So I'd love just to hear a little bit about you guys. You don't need to go around, but are you guys first years or second years? What's this cohort? Don't all yell out at once.
It's a little bit of a mixed bag. Everybody in the room with us here is a mix of second years and first years and third years.
Okay. Third years.
Yeah, he's never leaving.
Cherish it, Mike.
And then on Zoom, I believe we have, of course, CB as well as Aaron Smith, who I think you know.
Oh yeah.
Other folks, yeah. Please
Cool.
speak up, I can represent you.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Aaron. I love your Zoom photo.
Oh, thanks.
I need one of those.
Well, let's go meet up in the desert somewhere.
Hell yeah. Well, cool. So, yeah. I guess another question, does anyone out there kind of know what they want to do after the HAPE program? Or are y'all just going to Peter Pan it up in Crested Butte?
I'm gonna let other people answer.
It's a bit of a mixed bag. I think Peter Panning, it seems like an okay option, but also doing something in the field would be great.
Cool. So I assume the reason you have me here today is to help you maybe figure out how to get a job. Is that what we want to do after graduation?
Yes, please.
Cool. So I haven't been in the job market for about 4 years. It's crazy to say that I've been up here for almost 4 years, but I know what you're going through. I realize that getting a job, getting a job is like a job within itself, and balancing that with thesis work or projects, presentations, can be a lot to balance. So I want today just to be really interactive. I'm gonna just kind of talk about my experience from going to the HAPE program, finding a job, what that process was like. I was actually talking with Sam Van de Velde, who is a first year cohort, and I was telling him, I was like, I think you would have been a better choice for this, telling him this, because I think my process has been a little bit atypical. But hopefully it's helpful for you to hear of an experience and maybe get some glimmers of hope that you can get a job after a grad school. So really feel free today just to yell out and interrupt me at any point if you have questions or comments or want me to explain something a little bit further. So I'll get started. So the first slide, it kind of just brought me back to a little bit of nostalgia of my second semester of the HAPE program, where, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? It's kind of scary to, exit this little valley that was kind of holding me in this safe place. But I knew I wanted to essentially get my hands dirty a little bit, so to speak, and get some hands-on experience out in the field. I think at that point, I was also considering going into academia. Really enjoyed teaching at HAPE as a teaching assistant, and then also taught a freshman course while I was there. But at that point, I was like, I got bills to pay. I need to find a job. But I also want to continue living a lifestyle that aligns well with my interests. So the first thing that really came to mind was like, where do I want to live? And I think this is super important for everyone to think about is once you get into a job, likely it's not going to be somewhere as cool as Gunnison and Crested Butte if you end up moving. So really start to think about like, why am I working? Why am I working, 40 hours a week? What am I working for? And for me, I'm a huge skier and mountain biker. So I kind of like honed in on some locations and started to reach out to some different companies. So I'll talk about one story. I had it in my mind. I wanted to move to Utah. Before the HAPE program, I was a ski bum at Alta Snowbird. And I was like, skiing's great there. I should move back. I have a bunch of friends there. So I essentially interviewed for this job as I guess it was a per diem exercise physiologist role. And it was part-time. And it was in Provo, Utah. And basically interview went well. They asked me some pretty softball questions. And what I ended up realizing though was the job was basically a fill-in job for someone that was about to go on maternity leave. And it wasn't super clear of when this employee is off maternity leave that I'd still have a job. So I think my main thing I want to get across is try to find the right job. Don't just jump into something because it's a job. And yeah, just kind of a funny story of just me being like, yeah, I would love to move to Utah. All my friends are there, but I was like, I'm not going to just jump into some job just because it's a job. And then, so how I basically got to Bozeman was related to these two guys in these photos down here. So on the left is my buddy, Benji. We were mountain biking one day at Crested Butte and he basically broke his hand. And Benji basically started seeing this guy to the right, Dan, who's a hand therapist. And Dan, Benji and I started becoming friends and skied together. Dan eventually moved to Bozeman to work for Lone Peak. So when I graduated, Dan reached out and was like, hey, you should reach out to the company. There's talk about a performance center opening. Might be kind of a good opportunity for you. So my friend's misfortune about taking a hard fall is essentially what got me a job in Bozeman. So I can thank Benji for that. The main thing to kind of take from this though is not about your friends falling on their mountain bikes and benefiting from it. I want you to think about this guy, Dan. So he was kind of just a random acquaintance that was also a healthcare practitioner. And I want you to, I bet all of you know someone out there that is somewhat related in the medical field. Use those people. So reach out to them, tell them that, you're graduating, you have this skill set from your program, and just kind of connect with those people. Make sure they know that you're in the job market. I never thought that, this guy I'd, ski and Crested Butte with would end up helping me get a job, but it ended up working out that way. So as I mentioned, my job process was a little bit atypical. So I essentially got a contact of the CEO and then clinic director of the place I ended up working for. And I sent this, as a grad student, a really long email that he probably didn't read much of. But basically it was trying to convince him to hire me as an exercise physiologist. But they didn't have that job available. I was essentially trying to create my own job. We basically had a lot of conversations for a couple of weeks to, figure out, does this make sense? Would this be a good fit? And eventually they had me come up to Bozeman. And, at this point, I'm like, they're come up here and talk to them. I'm pretty confident I might get this. So I met with them at a coffee shop, and they're pretty frank with me. And it's probably not your typical interview, but they basically sit down and they're like, okay, what's your business plan? And I'm like, what? So the truth is I didn't have a business plan, but I knew the things that I was good at the time. So I basically tiptoed out of tomorrow. I'll have my business. But we kind of just got to know each other a little bit more, and realized that they were pretty good guys, and that they all like to mountain bike. And for the next day was at a coffee shop figuring out what a business plan actually was. But I basically was trying to figure out what services I could offer for this company, what they might cost, and just kind of some projections of how busy I. So anyways, 2 weeks, they're offering me a job, and I'm like, wow. In 3 weeks. So next piece of advice. So our performance center wasn't expected to open until November. So it actually wasn't built yet. And I was freaking broke. So I basically talked to them, and I was like, hey, I have a lot of other job, basically opportunities, and I need to have an answer and be able to get to Bozeman soon for this to work. They didn't know that my other opportunity was a maternity leave fill-in. So it still worked out. If you have a job offer, and when your start date is, you at this point, they've selected you, or they think that they're going to be beneficial for your business. So it's your opportunity to speak up at this point. Cool. So next bit, I'll start talking about some of the services I offer at Lone Peak, and kind of how I came to each of these services, what they look like. And if any of you go the crazy route of just kind of making your own job, maybe some insight on how to set something like this up. I think most of you do a fair bit of these things already. So I would consider yourselves pretty valuable at this point. And remember that you guys, people will seek out the things that you're in the lab, the HAP lab, and you're like, how am I ever going to get a job out of this? Just start thinking about how these projects and experiences could help, lead you to a paid position. So I do kind of a wide range of things at Lone Peak. So I kind of organize them into metabolic testing. So I do obviously VO2 max, lactate threshold, resting metabolic rate, and I do some lipid, people looking at have. Get to a little bit more of that in a second.
Hey, Tom,
Mechanical.
you're cutting in
Wait.
and out. Hi.
Say that again.
You're cutting in and out just a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if that's on our end or your end, or if you have any suggestions on how we might make that better.
Question. It might go. How bad is it?
Sometimes it's fine, and then other times we're missing fairly large chunks of what you're saying.
Okay.
But it's intermittent.
Start going out. Maybe someone just raise your hand up like this. And I'll try to circle back.
Okay.
What did you guys? Okay, I'll start that again. What did you guys miss so far in terms of maybe this slide?
I would actually go back to just the slide just before this, help me out, guys.
The last bullet point about negotiating.
Yeah,
Oh,
negotiation.
cool. So yeah, this is an important one. Can you guys still hear me? Awesome. Cool. So main point here was once you have a job offer, your employer wants you. So this is your time to basically leverage this opportunity. I basically was going into the story of, Lone Peak didn't know that my only other job offer was from a maternity leave fill-in. So they basically expressed interest in me, and I basically went into this scenario of saying like, hey, I want to start a lot earlier than what you guys want to start with, or else this isn't going to work out. And they were able to kind of pull some strings and be flexible on their end for basically me to start a little bit earlier. Cool. Any questions on that?
No, thank you so much for going back. We heard that really well.
Awesome. It's probably my internet. Okay. So I guess I'll kind of start over with this one. So at Lone Peak, I do a bunch of different services. We're a performance center that does PT, personal training, and then my services. So I kind of organize my services into metabolic testing. So I do VO2 max, lactate, RMR testing, and then we'll also do like risk factor profiles for people. And I'll get to a little bit more of those in a bit. And then I also do a fair bit of biomechanics work. My undergrad was in exercise and movement science. We didn't do a whole lot of biomechanics in the HAPE program. So some of this was kind of carryover from undergrad. I do bike fitting, running analysis, and I work with some clients who are kind of transitioning out of rehab if they've had maybe an ACL tear skiing, and kind of push them a little bit to get them where they need to be from a performance perspective. I also do a fair bit of endurance coaching. So this might be someone, training for a race, like an endurance race, has an event that they want some help organizing their training calendar on. I do just a little bit, probably a little bit less though, exercise prescription. So I actually have some referral sources from a diabetes clinic. I might send people over for metabolic testing and exercise prescription. And then the last is just a little bit of consulting work. That's kind of a wide range of things. Yeah, I'll sip of water here. Okay. So a big shift from grad school to working in a private business is you're not working with research participants anymore. Okay, so these people are paying clients. They're coming in to see you and they want you to make them better. So this was a big shift for me initially, leaving the HAPE program where we were, we had some wellness elevated clients, but people weren't necessarily coming in for these specialized services. So for me, I had to really figure out how to monetize some of these things I learned in the lab. So thinking about VO2 max and lactate threshold testing. So this is mostly for your endurance athlete who is going to want some help with figuring out proper training zones. So they might be training with heart rate or maybe a power meter on their bike or speed. Generally, they're usually decently educated in how to train, but they want a better understanding of how to be more efficient and how to do better at, races or just feel better. The other side of this is kind of the oddballs who come in and will just, come in and say like maybe they're plateauing or they just don't really feel that good when exercising. Maybe they're not losing weight and they've been exercising like crazy. And with this type of person, we want to get a better understanding of how their metabolism is working. I'll chat through some scenarios of this in a bit. And then thinking about how this works on a day-to-day schedule perspective. So what do you want this appointment to look like? So for me, I wanted to kind of consider how long someone was coming in for one of these appointments, what type of information I want to share with them. If we're doing a stress test, what protocol we're using. And then this last bit, so this is a paying customer, like I said. So we talk a lot about my company, about someone's internal problem. So why did this person actually come in for VO2 max? So I want you guys to think about this. So any guesses? Why would someone want to actually come in for their VO2 max?
To have a better sense of their training zones. Like you could use it for ventilatory thresholds or heart rate zones.
Maybe, but what's like the core of it?
Maximal aerobic capacity.
They want to race. They might be insecure with where they're at physically or fitness wise.
Thank you. So that's an awesome answer. And it was huge for me to kind of realize that with my job. So no one really cares what their VO2 max is. And I could try and explain this to someone for hours on end. Their eyes are just going to glaze over. So when you're in a job like mine, you're going to be working with someone that doesn't really know a whole lot about this background, all the science. Maybe they might not even care. They just want to figure out like, why am I the slowest person when I go mountain biking? And maybe they feel some insecurity, like you mentioned. So how can you help this person with this information? So for me, it's all about making this information something that they can work off of, that's going to make them better. And you can make this appointment look a lot of different ways, but you need to make this person better. And you can't like send this person out with this long sheet that's just telling them, your second ventilatory threshold, it was here. This person's not going to know like what to do with that. So you got to help this person and address why they're actually coming in. And maybe it's not that, maybe they're not insecure. Maybe it's something else. But for me, with the flow of appointment, I'll usually spend 20 minutes talking to the person before we actually have them warming up, because I want to understand what's some actionable things that's going to help this person out. Cool. So a little bit more of the nerdy stuff.
Wait, hold on, Tom, I've got a question. Do you have any
Awesome.
examples of things that you've sent clients home with that have been like concretely useful for them?
Yeah. So I think trying to simplify things for people is a really good thing to think about. I'll get to it, or maybe I don't want to give that away.
Yeah.
Next slide. Next two slides, it'll kind of explain this a little bit more, but essentially, so I usually set my appointments to like 2 hours long. So that's a long time with someone. The testing only takes, from a warm up, cool down, everything like an hour. It's taking longer than that. There was some sort of delay in the process, which is fine. For me, I want to educate this person enough so that they know what to do with this information, which I'll talk about here. So I'll usually bring up some graphs right after the test, because this person wants to know, how good did I do? Often the first thing someone will say is, I could have gone longer. And you're like, no, man, I think you're at max, or max heart rate, whatever it might be. But what I'll bring up to people, I'll usually talk them through how I set up training zones. So I'll talk about some brief physiology of what someone's aerobic threshold is, what their lactate threshold are. So you guys will probably be most familiar with VT1 and VT2 from the HATE program. So I'll chat about what those things are and how you can use those to help their understanding of how to train properly. There's a lot of interpretations of how to train properly, and I'll honestly put in my opinion within that session of like, I think you should do, if you're going to do two things, you should do these two things. But the reason they're really coming in is to, or we already went over the reason, but they really want to figure out their training zones and like what to do. So explaining how you come up with those training zones can be powerful for that person. So they like actually follow training zones. Most people just kind of go out and just do whatever they want any day. So just kind of be mindful of that. So these are just kind of graphs from a VO2 max and lactate threshold. I think I actually was doing them combined for this test. It was the same participant. And then I'll usually send them home with basically an Excel document that has all their results, heart rate zones, power zones if they're a cyclist, and then kind of just chatting through like how to use these zones properly. I'll talk a bit about it a little bit later, but this might actually fit into someone who wants to get some help from you. Some people might be like, this is awesome information. I don't really think I have the time to actually plan my training out the right way. Can you just help me? So this might, for me, turn exercise prescription client. Am I going out?
Yeah, but you came back.
Okay, cool. I was just saying that someone coming in for testing might end up turning into a coaching client or an exercise prescription client. Cool. Okay, so can everyone see everything on this screen?
Yeah, hold on.
You can minimize me if you need to.
And now we can.
All right, I'm gonna minimize myself too. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna go back for a second. So the third bullet point down is someone's metabolism working correctly. Just want you to think about that. Cool. So this is actually a real client that came in this fall, who I'm working with now as a coaching client. And she basically came in and was like, I've been mountain biking for 15 years. I feel like I'm just not getting any better. She gets this like burning like sensation. She just kind of like hits this wall while riding her bike. And no matter like how hard she trains, she just can't really improve her fitness or keep up with her partners. So I was like, all right, well, we got to do a lactate test. I think I did VO2 max as well, but I want you guys to look at this graph and we can nerd out for just a little bit. But what looks off about this test? Okay, so on the bottom, we have power. So she warmed up at 60 watts and we did 3-minute stages of 20 watts increasing. The first lactate was between 4 and 5.
Or like, yeah,
Last lactate was at 10.
Why is her lactate over obla? I'm confused.
What's obla?
Her resting lactate is over 4 millimoles per liter.
So 60 watts, that was her warm up.
Okay. So then she came back down.
So I'll read off the lactate. So at 60 watts, she's between 4 and 5.
Yeah.
80 watts, 3 and 4. 100, 3 and 4. Went to 4, 5, etc.
Yeah. It seems like her lactate is high and not changing until the end of the 160 watt stage.
She's just redlining right away. Like,
Yeah.
She doesn't really have the ability to just like push very hard without dipping into like her lactate system. Like she's not very good at really.
Yeah, that's an awesome answer. So lactate accumulation, explain this to this person. So we're balancing rate of appearance, so how quickly she's putting lactate into her blood, and then rate of disposal, right? So how quickly can she take lactate out of her blood? So normally, so when she's at 80 watts and 100 watts, we should see that way below 2 millimoles. So would this be an appearance problem or a disposal problem?
Disposal.
Awesome. Yeah, disposal uptake. So this client is going to plateau pretty quick. If she wants to do sports like mountain biking where you're up for a couple hours. So the reason I'm showing you this is when you enter into a job, if it's like mine, you're going to see some funky stuff where you're like, that's not what my textbook showed me. What the hell? So it's good to have a good physiological basis of why you might see certain numbers. And then the next question is like what to do with this person. And that's where you need to kind of develop your own philosophy behind how to train each person. And I'm not going to tell you like what to do with this person because, you know, everyone's going to have their own approach. But you need to figure out for this person and have an explanation for them. Why is her legs burning? And you can just break down some basic physiology for her to understand, okay, I need to work with this guy because he knows like, you know, he knows something about my blood that doesn't make sense and I'm going to listen to him. So be happy to talk about this more. But main point here, you're going to see some funky things out there that you might not normally see. And you gotta kind of be on the spot to figure out like, what should I do with this person? Any questions on that?
She should try IPC.
That's a good idea. I'll
Maybe HPC.
I'll incorporate that with her.
What did you prescribe for her, Tom?
That was a good question. I'm gonna circle back or turn that into a question for you guys. So how would I train better lactate disposal?
More base aerobic threshold training, like sub zone 2.
Oh yeah.
5 hours.
So why though? If you're gonna tell me, all right, I have to stay at this low heart rate for hours, you could better convince me, like, because that's boring, right?
But it'll improve her aerobic capacity. What are those physiological?
So without even using like a word like aerobic, like I'm already confused.
It's like she's riding in group rides all the time. So like she already thinks she's the slowest one, so she's already pushing really hard. So she's always using the aerobic system. Like she needs some time to just develop her like easy mileage, like, because that system
Bingo.
is really underdeveloped.
Yeah, and I think what I liked about that was you related it to something that she does. Right. So really be careful once you start using like complex physiological terms with people. Like she's going to think group ride and feeling maxed out the whole time. So you have to change her mindset of like, okay, like it doesn't make sense. Like she's like, why should I ride slow? How's that gonna make me fast? So building her up, giving her a little bit of physiology, and then telling her what kind of adaptations we can expect. And she asked me this too. She's like, okay, how will I know I'm getting better? So, you know, I'll pose that to you guys. Like, how would we know that she is getting better from doing this zone 2 work?
She'll start getting faster in that zone 2.
Maybe.
And where she does exert, up higher when she's doing a higher effort ride, she will probably get less burning sensation and less of a plateau in her power.
Yeah, I like that. It's gonna like relate to like what her internal problem is.
Yeah.
Cool.
That sounds fun. I like your job.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the next bit. This is so one of the questions Maggie sent me was if I had done other jobs over the years. So when I was before grad school, I was doing a lot of mountain bike coaching, and actually, sorry, during grad school, I was doing a lot of mountain bike coaching, and spent a lot of time on the bike myself. And I just started getting really interested in the biomechanics of cycling. So I basically showed up to Lone Peak with not much training in bike fitting, but basically was like, yeah, I'm going to do bike fitting. But I basically related to like what my previous profession was for that short bit of time, and basically just like figured out this kind of as I went. And basically, so I start seeing clients for fits. I'll run them through a movement screen. I'll do some filming of this person on the bike, then just make some changes to their fit so they're more comfortable and maybe pain-free. So my main point here is like, you don't have to have everything figured out the day you graduate. So I didn't really know how to bike fit, but I talked about it as like, it's something I really want to do and get better at. I, saw enough kids with their seat down way too low to have a decent idea of how a bike should fit. But it's a learning process even when you graduate. And I've developed over time to be able to take on some more complex cases of looking at mechanics and making some changes for people. So I read a book, I took some online courses and just got some reps with friends and some coworkers, and then started getting more and more people interested in it in the community. Okay. So Shane Nixick, who is in the 3rd cohort, he did a project when I was a TA about running biomechanics. And I didn't have a whole lot of experience in like analyzing running at that point. But I got super interested in this, and we basically nerded out for a few weeks before I moved off. But I want to talk a little bit about, it's kind of a similar story about the bike fitting. Like I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew I wanted to do it. So I started developing basically a running analysis service where I'd start filming people from different angles and trying to understand what's happening with their gait versus what should be happening. So this might be a PT referral, or someone that just, wants to come directly to see me because they have pain or feel inefficient. And I'll basically film them on an iPad, nothing too fancy, and just start to talk to that person about what's happening. And then for me, this usually leads to further sessions where we're trying to address what we saw during that running analysis. Cool. And that might also turn into someone I create a plan for if they want to like train for a race or something like that. Okay. So working for a PT company, I'm going to get a lot of referrals from PTs, obviously. Whoops. So I do a fair bit of one-on-one training with clients who are still needing some support to maybe get back to their sport. So this is kind of a fun thing that mixes up just the normal exercise physiology. I'm able to kind of work with someone more of a gym setting. We do get to incorporate some stuff that's still pretty nerdy, which I'll talk about here in a second. But one thing I want us to think about is like, so if someone is sitting down with me and they're like, okay, I want to be a better mountain biker. And, they tell me like their training plan and all this, and then we do a bike fit and, their training actually is pretty good. Their fit looks pretty good, but we just realized they're weak as shit. So like, I'm not going to just shove exercise physiology down their throat. I'm going to say, hey, we need to get you on a strength plan because that is your low-hanging fruit. And we need to like figure out what this client actually needs. So not something I did a whole lot of before my job now, but kind of a fun thing I get to, work on with clients. So this is a cool machine we use. It's called the 1080 Quantum. This guy's a skier who tore his ACL last year. Not really a crazy exercise or anything. Really what we're gonna
Tom, will you play that video one more time?
Yeah, totally.
Thank you.
Cool. We all see that?
Yeah, way better.
Cool. So main point here is oh, God, here we go. So the 1080 Quantum is something we can actually measure a lot of variables about how someone's moving. So this isn't his graph, I couldn't find it, but we can measure reps of like force, power, that sort of thing, and basically give someone some objective data who might be having some imbalances side to side with strength. And this might be something that I look at over time to see if something's improving. So just kind of another cool little piece of technology we get to use. Okay.
Training Peaks.
Training Peaks. Who knows about Training Peaks? A couple of you? Do a few of you currently or want to get into coaching?
Yes. I think
Cool.
all of us. Except for
Yeah.
Ben.
So I think a recommendation for Christina. So you should teach your students or have someone teach them how to use Training Peaks.
I'll do it.
I think that would have been a really effective thing in the HAPE program, to learn how you can create programs and have something that, students can, step away with and already have something they can get paid for. You can use Training Peaks for, someone who's a high level athlete all the way to clinical ex phys. But basically, so I do a fair bit of coaching. I usually hold about 10 to 20 clients at a time. And kind of just a fun way to see people, throughout their training program. Sounds like everyone's kind of familiar with this. Just another aspect of my job that is pretty fun. The thing that's really cool is I get to test a lot of my clients and plug into Training Peaks what their training zones are from lactate or VO2 tests. And I think this is an awesome way to use some of the science in the lab and be practical with it. And then just have some interaction with this person. So giving them some comments or seeing what their sleep is, that sort of thing. So the HAPE program, get some Training Peaks in there. Okay, so this all probably sounds fun and all, but the hard part is actually getting clients. So I just want to chat through some takeaways of, how I've learned to get clients over the last couple of years. Some things that have worked and some things that haven't worked. So ultimately, getting a referral source for no matter what you're doing is kind of like the lifeblood of working in a setting like mine. So I've developed a relationship with a local gym called the Mountain Project, and they do their own coaching and have a lot of athletes like training for trail running, mountain biking, all sorts of things. But I get a lot of referrals from them, and they basically will send me clients to test so I can send info to their coaches about how their athletes are doing, that sort of thing. So initially I did some testing for free for them, just to kind of get my name out there. And this kind of rings into the next note, but just do a really good job for these people and show what your value is. Create a good relationship with them. And like I said before, just create actionable information and be nice. This is like I said, your lifeblood. So if you're going to do something like this, just really making sure you have that referral source dialed. I mentioned before, I also get some referrals from Bozeman Health. So I get a nurse practitioner send me some clients here and there. I had an interesting experience talking to them at one point. He said, so I had a client there who had diabetes, who went there, and he told me someone told him he should exercise 5 days a week, 30 minutes at 140 beats per minute. So I was like, okay, how'd you get that information? And they're like, well, we did the heart rate reserve or something like that. I think they were intending for around zone 2. This guy's real zone 2 was 115 beats per minute. So what would that do to a diabetic if he's saying, I get to 140 beats per minute, 5 days a week?
Yeah. Big problem for his blood sugar regulation.
Oh yeah. So it's our role as exercise physiologists to educate people. People don't really know how to give exercise guidelines. They really don't. So think about yourself as an expert in that field and really get the word out of how we can actually make people better. Talk about why people should test with you and why they should work with you to actually get a legit exercise program. Marketing. So marketing is a really funny one. You can spend a lot of money with marketing, social media, online ads. What do you guys think my top driver of clients is from marketing?
Like a platform, Instagram?
Nope. Any other guesses?
Is it your clinic?
Nope,
Like,
maybe, sort of.
no?
I'll just tell you the answer. So
Word of mouth.
yes, thank you. Did everyone hear Christina? Cool. So word of mouth is the best marketing tool out there. So if you do a really good job for someone and they're stoked because you made them better, they're going to tell their friends that I worked with so-and-so and they made me faster. And that person's going to really condense your messaging better than you ever will. Because we're all a bunch of nerds and no one wants to hear it from us. So figure out who did I really help? And how can I leverage that person? Does that person have other friends? Like, hey, do you have other friends that are also really slow and need my help? So that sort of thing. And then lastly, so doing things for free. I've done probably a little bit too much for, and there's a fine line for this. So you're probably one conversation on the airplane. So,
Wait,
oh,
go back. Just a little bit, you heard clearly, you said, do you have other friends who are slow and need my help? And then you started going into the next thing and then we lost it.
cool. So the last, you guys hear me now?
Yes, sorry.
No, thanks for telling me. I appreciate it. So doing things for free. You're probably wondering why that's related to this awkward GIF of people talking on an airplane. This is crazy. So if someone on an airplane figures out that you're a professional,
We heard if you're on an airplane and they figure out that you're a professional.
perfect. So they realize you're an expert in exercise and they start peppering you with questions. So where do you draw the line there? So I have a lot of student loans that I need to pay off, and me giving out free advice constantly, like that's not going to pay off my student loans. So I want you guys just to think about this a little bit. So like, if you have someone that's asking for all this free advice, you need to figure out how you can leverage this person's interest into, but I'm on an airplane right now. You can set up a Zoom call with me. Oh,
We heard, I'm on an airplane right now. You could set up a Zoom call with me.
cool. Thank you. You're and God.
Sorry, Tom. Uh-oh, did we lose him?
Okay, can you hear me?
Let's give it a second. I feel
Thank
like your internet's coming and going. Everybody take water. Everybody take a drink.
I'll just take a second.
Yeah.
All right, so main point here, you can give it advice if you want, but don't give out too much advice. Cool. All right. Next slide. Okay. So Maggie sent me this question. How do you value your time and skills? Or how do you negotiate sufficient compensation? So one of the hardest things for me initially was telling someone they need to pay me money without feeling like I was a used car salesman. Everyone working in this field is, I'd hope, compassionate and wants to help people. And the last thing to really think about is like trying to profit off this person. But you do at the end of the day need to get paid. So it's okay to tell someone how much something costs. Don't be afraid to do that. And I guarantee it will be hard at first, but don't lowball yourself. So you're making real changes for people in their lives. And just look to see what other people are charging out there, whether it's in your community or online, and just stand true to like what the average is or what you really think is going to pay you what you're worth. But definitely a hard one there. Okay, so last bit, I get a lot of questions from students and comments about certifications. I have some mixed feelings about this. I had a coworker who was trying to go to PT school, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna get my CSCS because it looks good on my resume for PT school. I hear that a lot. And that stuff drives me crazy. So if I was interviewing you and you have this long list of letters next to your name, but no real life experiences, you're not going to make it far in an interview with me. So don't try and just like cover yourself with certifications to make you look good. Just go out and get experiences. Even if you tell me, hey, I developed a training program for my friend, that's better than telling me, hey, I took this weekend course and I have some letters next to my name. Obviously some jobs require some qualifications, and fill those out to get you where you need to be. But what I've kind of learned is, all of these certifications are going to tell you how to think or how to do things. And it's really important to, think for yourself. You can have your own opinion of how to do something without having to get certified in doing that. You guys have learned a lot of good things in the HAPE program that you can walk with right away without, 10 certifications. I've gotten a few certifications, but I did them because I wanted to learn something really specific to help my clients. And that's a big difference there. Awesome. So that's all I have for slides. I know we wanted to kind of open up for questions. So yeah, let's fire away.
Thank you, Tom. That was awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Yes. Well, I usually start it off. I was going to ask you what certifications you ended up getting.
That was a good question. So where I work, the PTs, they kind of work in this, I don't know what you call it, but they all kind of, how do I even describe this? They follow a train of thought called applied functional science. And I'm not recommending like going out and getting all the AFS certifications. But for me, it was like basically it was called 3D maps. And it was a way to do a movement screen on someone. But what I really learned from it was how to effectively see biomechanics better. So it's really just a review on how different joints and bones move in the body and how they kind of work together. And I don't really even use that movement screen, but it was a good refresher for me to kind of return to some of those things. I do have one bike fit certification. A lot of it was stuff I already knew, and I don't even know what it's called. I don't put it next to my name or anything. but it was kind of just a way to check with myself to make sure I wasn't missing anything in my process. And then lastly, I have a 1080, so that quantum machine. I have a certification through them for another product they have called the 1080 map, which is another movement screen. Essentially, I felt like my weak side going into this job was biomechanics. So I'd spent probably most of my certification time and space just getting better at that, rather than focusing a lot on physiology. I am taking one course right now with someone named Steve Ingham. It's called Applied Physiology Practitioner course, I think. His company is called Supporting Champions. It's pretty cool. It goes over a lot of stuff you guys are learning in the HAPE program. But he works at kind of a Olympic or elite level. So it's kind of a nice way to check in to see if there's anything new in the physiology space. And that's about it, actually.
Thank you. What was that guy's, Steve Ingham?
Yeah, it's Ingham.
Great.
You said at the beginning that you thought Sam might be a better example. For those of us that don't know Sam, like what is he doing right now?
So Sam also works for Lone Peak. He's a very similar job to mine, but he works in our Big Sky location. The reason I thought he'd be a better example is he's done more jobs than me. I've only worked one job. So he's worked a lot in cardiac rehab at different hospitals mostly. And then I know he wanted to enter into the more of the performance realm of our profession. And we were in conversation for quite a while, just talking about getting him here and, you know, what our jobs are like and that sort of thing. He'd be a great resource for anyone looking to, you know, dive into the clinical world and understand the cardiac rehab jobs a bit better, because I know that's a pretty common job for Master of Science and ex-phys students.
Do you have a sense of how common kind of what you have going is? Like, is it a growing field, or is it still kind of like creating your job if you're like going to be seeking this out?
That's a really good question. I wouldn't have a sense of like how many jobs like mine are out there. But I do see a lot of people becoming more interested in metabolic testing. There was a book that came out a couple years ago called Training for the Uphill Athlete. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about this, but I just got this wave of people who wanted to know what, you know, their zone 2 heart rate was, which is cool. I was like, sweet. They're kind of like educating people on a larger scale. So I think, to answer your question, I think there's more and more people getting interested in exercise physiology. And there's a lot of interest in the coaching world. I'd like to say that there's probably going to be more of a mix of those two things together. I don't think you can really replace an exercise physiologist in terms of getting correct numbers on someone's lactate or VO2 or heart rate. I think we'll see probably more technology that's trying to replicate that. Like, you know, I think there's a company that there's companies that just claim they can measure these things without a lab, and I think that's all BS. But I think that to answer your question, there's more people getting interested in some of the terminology and training focus that we talk about. And there's a lot of interest in coaching. A lot of those businesses are growing very quick right now.
If anyone on Zoom has something, feel free to just unmute and go for it. I can see people. Yeah. Oh, nothing in the chat. Except Erin said she had to leave. Bye, Erin. This is your chance, guys. Ask him everything you can. He's a vital resource.
I guess you've kind of touched on it, but filling like the voids of your knowledge after graduation and like kind of in the workforce, like what have you found to be like the best way? Is it just kind of research topics as they come up, or just like real world application of it? Or do you feel like you came out of the program with like a good grip on a lot of what you use now?
It's a good question. So I think the thing I felt strongest in from the program was probably testing. And I think that learning things is a mix of trying things on yourself, which is important, trying things on clients and just being patient with the process. I learn a lot through podcasts. And yeah, it's kind of a mix of everything, I'd say. In terms of like biomechanics specifically, that's a hard one, but I definitely learned a lot from my colleagues, and just would ask a lot of questions and trying to get people's opinion or that sort of thing. But yeah, I'd say it's a mix of everything, and just being vulnerable with like what you know and what you don't know is totally cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In terms of trying things on yourself, I did notice and share with everybody your basement video of you conducting a VO2 max on yourself. And I am just personally interested in getting a metabolic or a mobile VO2 max something,
Cool.
especially in terms of potentially starting a coaching or just exercise physiology assessment business.
Nice.
Any recommendations? Start.
Yeah. So I actually remember when I first started this job, I frantically, was trying to figure out what we should order here for metabolic equipment. And I think I emailed Dr. Dalek and he gave me some good advice. The thing you have to balance out with that problem is figuring out what your budget is and like what your goals are from this equipment. So if I could afford like a research grade portable metabolic analyzer, I would, but those cost like 40 grand. And yeah, it's like the really nice ones that are like research grade. So I end up going with obviously got like lactate analyzer, which is a lot more on the cheap side if you're just trying to get started, just getting your analyzer and strips and all the other equipment you need. I got a Pinot metabolic analyzer, and it's kind of a newer company. I'll be honest, there are some pros and cons to using it. It's a breath by breath analysis system, compared to having one that has a mixing chamber. And I wouldn't say it's like research grade, but I'll have, I question some accuracy of certain things with it. So if your goal is to be like precise and have like your percent error be as tight as possible, I would not go with that unit. But if you're trying to just get training zones and work with clients, I've found it to be the most affordable that's out there. Another thing that you could do is look into things that are used out there, which might save you some money. I know you could probably kind of search around online and see if anyone has things for sale, but yeah, it's a tough one. It's equipment that is expensive and it breaks a lot. So one of the biggest things that Dr. D emphasized was don't let anyone else touch your metabolic analyzer. I have a sensor that connects to mine, and I looked at it one day and there was like a piece of plastic just missing on it. And I think that a cleaning person was like, dropped it. I don't know what happened, or maybe it was me. Don't let myself touch it. But yeah, just be really careful with this stuff. It can break really easily. And if I was starting off again, I would probably just start with lactate and then save up for a metabolic analyzer. I might buy a Pinot again. I don't know. But just balancing out what your budget is versus like what your needs are is important.
Okay. That's really good to hear, because one of my, Christina will laugh at me probably, but one of my wayward ideas is that I'd love to build a mobile lab for educational purposes and tour it around the state. And so what I'm hearing is maybe don't do a metabolic analyzer to start.
Yeah, I mean, you could. It just depends. Like, if you could figure out a way to, fund it properly, and just making sure that you have like kind of a sure idea of the type of clients that would pay you for this. I wouldn't go out and just say like, I have this, fancy metabolic analyzer, come work with me. I would probably develop a little bit more of a following if you don't have one yet. And then maybe work towards like a step-by-step kind of business plan. But I found, as long as it's done correctly, lactate to be pretty accurate if your protocol is correct, and has some pretty good actionable information.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
I think this is my last one. You mentioned podcasts. What are your like top podcast recommendations?
Yes.
Good one. So let's see. I listen to Fast Labs.
Yes.
I think they're great. They have a lot of like mixed guests on there, in the exercise physiology world. Peter Attia is pretty good. He's had some good people on there. Peter Attia, The Drive. Gosh, I've listened to a couple of coaching podcasts and some bike fitting podcasts. There's a guy named Colby Pierce, based out of Boulder, I think, that does coaching and bike fitting. And he's kind of a hippie, but he's had some good guests on and just some good ideas when it comes to being like a holistic coach. and how to kind of approach bike fitting in a way that's a little bit against using so much technology and more about using your trained eye. I'd say those are my top three. I mean, I think another thing to think about, so working with humans, you know, you can be a great exercise physiologist, but you're also going to have people that are have some psychological problems that you're going to have to figure out how to work through. I'm a big proponent of meditation and kind of learned that the last couple of years. So I recommend people listen to meditation podcasts. I listen to the Sam Harris podcast a lot. But kind of just going back to like the client thing, like if someone you're working with, if they're so stressed about life and they're not able to get their workouts in and you want to make that person better, I think it is important to have some strategies you can provide or encourage that person to go that route to work on any mental health problems they might be going through. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but what are some podcasts you guys listen to? I've been talking a lot today.
Rhonda Patrick.
Which one?
Rhonda Patrick.
Oh yeah,
She's incredible.
she's awesome. I've listened to her.
The crew over like Trainer Road
Yeah.
has some pretty good ones. They had like I think they might have discontinued it, but they had a series where they interviewed basically the authors of like good studies that are applicable to their like training. And so they had like actual physiologists on to discuss it. That was pretty cool.
We've actually we're doing a thesis together and our entire thesis is based off of one of those podcast episodes.
What's the thesis project?
We're looking at cross acclimation between heat and hypoxia.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, should be pretty fun.
Trying to build our own environmental chamber is so fun.
Get there.
It's
Do you
great.
guys still have that machine that simulates altitude?
We have a new one called Hypoxico.
Oh, you got a new one.
Yeah, we're pretty stoked about it. We made some people sick this week. It's great.
What kind of altitude can you simulate?
We can, well,
We found out we can go up to 20,000 feet on accident.
yeah. It's not calibrated to, or it's calibrated to sea level, so you had to do adjustments. So 14,000 ended up being 21,000.
It's fine.
A lot.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Does anyone else have any cool thesis projects?
This guy's presenting on Friday.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
It's fun. Come on.
It's really cool. He's using the ARX.
Yeah, so it's similar. I think 1080 has a similar device. It's a pseudo isokinetic device.
Yep.
We compared it to a traditional like barbell protocol and just kind of looked at strength and hypertrophy measures at the end.
That's awesome. So like a training study.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I use the isokinetic feature quite a bit with our 1080. It definitely wrecks people.
Oh yeah, I did have a question. So you said at one point about like when you're talking about giving too much away for free, you said like we can set up a Zoom call. Like what do you charge for those kind of conversations, or what do you charge for a lot of your stuff?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So I'd say my services range, if we're thinking about from an hourly perspective, from about $60 to $125 an hour. For services for VO2 max and lactate, I usually charge $150 per visit. If I do those both in the same session or at the same time, that's $250. Consulting, usually ranges from $75 to $100 an hour. One-on-one, like strength training or like anything like that is usually $60 to $80 an hour. Depending if someone's getting a discount or they're getting buying multiple sessions in a package. Coaching usually averages around $200 a month. Running analysis, $100 for an hour, and then follow-up visits usually $75 per hour. Bike fitting is $100 per hour. So kind of that range of things. If it was someone on an airplane, I would probably like say like more of like the upper end of that. You know, like if you've given them free advice already, and sometimes this will happen, someone will get I'll usually do like free consults, just to kind of get in front of someone first. And that might be a 20-minute, 30-minute conversation. And then there's kind of an art of like being like, okay, like let's turn this into more of a paid visit. But I usually, yeah, if it's someone on an airplane, I would definitely upcharge.
That's funny. Awesome. Well, I wish I could throw you some of the candy we were having before.
Oh, shoot. That's all right.
Trivia candy. This has been incredible, Tom. Thank you so much for talking to us, and I have it in my mind that maybe we'll bring you back next term again. And get some of the first years in here. We have one representative, but I think they'd all really benefit from hearing you talk about this stuff.
Oh yeah. It's important to start thinking about this stuff early. A lot of different directions you can go with after the program, and yeah, just you don't want to feel too stuck when you finish, because you do know a lot and you do have a potential to do a lot of cool things.
Right. Totally. It's nice to know that all of our skills are valued.
Oh, they're definitely valued. Just don't nerd out on people too much. Just do it in small doses.
What do you mean?
You just wait.
Thank you so much for joining us. Truly.
Thanks, Tom. That was awesome.
For sure. Thanks for hanging in here. Just got a message.
What's Cindy's favorite podcast? I want to know. What'd you say?
I'm still here. It's called You're Wrong About, and it has nothing to do with science. Some try to talk about science and they get it wrong, but it's really fun, and it's like brain candy. It's good. It's historical.
I do think it's good to have a break from this stuff. So like learn how to consume other things other than exercise physiology.
I feel that. I've listened to more hours than I care to disclose of D&D actual play podcasts. They're pretty great.
That's
all right,
sweet.
cool.
All right, everyone. Thanks for having me, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Tom.
Cheers. Thank you.
Take care.